What up? It's your boy Bass. Y'all tuned in to another episode of Ends Podcast. On this episode, we getting right back down to business. But we're going to be talking about LLCs, assets, separation of businesses, and really just taking that, especially if you're a clothing or anybody that's a vendor, do clothing or any merchandise, anything like that, taking that grind to the next level. As you all know, we already have we currently already have an LLC established. We have a couple LLCs established, but one of them in particular is Ends Media. That's who owns and operates basically Ends Podcast, but another one in Ends Music. But as y'all know, we also sell merchandise. In every episode, we shout out how y'all can support us and also help be the voice of the culture by rocking, the brand and merchandise. You feel me? And because you understand what it stands for, you understand the topic of these conversations. But long story short, y'all see that we sell merchandise. That is a different aspect of the business. That is a whole different style of business. That's retail. That's retail versus like Ends Media, which is more, production, media marketing, things like that. So, to better and then also when you're dealing with retail and things like that too, is also a different type of liability, things like that. Shipping, return on products, defective products, shit like that. That can basically, long story short, cost you in the end, no matter if it's legal or just money wise. So for us, for liability reasons, we separated that, not just for our purpose, but also for your purpose. Because we're doing that, because now when you establish and basically the criteria of a retail, you can basically set up things like like retail insurance and stuff like that can reinsure your products, things of that nature. But when you want to classify your business, they want to ask you what type of business are you. You going to classify yourself as a media company, but we do these type of sales and stuff like that. So long story short, but that's just kind of going off topic, but to stay on topic, long story short, to limit your liabilities, protect your assets and things of that nature. If your business, if those are two different business structures, but they also operate like separate entities. If you think about it, the retail sector and all that type of stuff is basically operates as its own entity. So therefore, we separated it as its own entity, especially when you get to talk about the merchandise from us selling our own stuff to us being affiliate marketing and but then also from the brands that we do hold, such as Ends, the family, and things of that nature. Excuse me. But being able to consolidate all those brands underneath its own entity. And then that's when we formed Ends Family Products. So Ends Family Products is a company basically that handles handles the management and operations of those brands and of the whole retail business. That's his own retail business. It basically is his own entity of retail. So anything that you see far as the Ends merchandise, from clothing to headphones to the sunglasses that y'all might see me wearing in certain episodes, things of that nature, those are all underneath the Ends Family Products. And also too, as far as the branding, and I was able to just separate those two. And then, but then at the same time, to still keep it on the books and things of that nature, basically Ends Media is able to service Ends products and help push those products. And I was able also to separate those business costs as well. As far as basically like shipping expenses and things of that nature, buying product, and also buying equipment and things of that nature that you will buy on the retail side. You can literally keep that all, especially when it come down to accounting and things of that nature. You can keep those all on one book. You feel me? Those are all for one company, one entity. Those are all reliable and all liable. Just basically those are all underneath the books for this company. You feel me? Because that is who are responsible for it, who's liable for it. But then also thinking about a protection thing too as well. I didn't want to say somebody was to sue me or anything like that. Somebody just wanted to try to sue me. Actually, I shouldn't say sue me, but try to sue us because of our product or something like that. They try to sue us the whole company won't be liable for that actual, case, because that is a retail. You feel me? Like, we want to separate that, because then that also makes, if it was underneath the whole Ends Media umbrella, then that will make Ends Media liable for any legal, like basically any legal allegations that come from, us selling merchandise and things of that nature. That will make Ends Media liable for that. Now, Ends Media is running Ends podcast, so it's like anything that happened can affect other different segments, or I said segment, but just other different divisions of Ends Media. Like, Ends Media could be affected just by a lawsuit that came from just from the merchandise, from the Ends family merchandise, anything like that. So we separated that. So if anything was to happen, basically Ends family product is liable for it, and Ends Media don't gotta take the hit. So we ain't gotta worry about anything that happens on this side affecting Ends podcast or Ends music, because those are platforms that are managed and operating by like our marketing and media teams. You feel me? Though they are heavily involved and invested in those platforms. So those platforms is, basically what we publishing to. The fashion, you feel me? That whole department, they operate as their own entity. You feel me? Even when it come down to like, when like you start thinking about the legal side and the legal aspect of it, copyright and all that, all that type of stuff. That's all on that side. So that's why it was one of the moves to really separate those entities. So now, also taking a step back too, and just kind of just really looking at the whole sale of the whole merchandise too. Man, that was a benefit when we started looking into expanding. You feel me? When you start thinking about expanding, especially on like a scale of when you selling merchandise and things of that nature, we start that can really open up a lot of doors for you, even though Ends Media is already an established company, an established business. Establishing that retail industry too also allow us to open up and really expand. And because this is entity can manage, just thinking about it being, able to be not self-managed, but just be managed and driven with this own agenda and own ideas, and it don't have to go off of priority. You feel me? Like, be like, damn, we gotta push this back or budget this a certain type of way just due to it's not priority right now. Like, no, it's its own driver, its own thinking. Whoever's heading the ship, they're thinking every day about putting this first. You feel me? Like, whoever's managing and leading that team, they thinking every day about, this is what we do, this is it. You feel me? How do we change the game? This is our lane. And being able to separate that without corrupting that, man. So, and that's one of the best things about business is, it's like playing chess. You gotta figure out the strength and the value of different pieces, and also how do you allow those pieces to maneuver and act and be its own piece that really gives it its value. For example, like, if you don't use certain pieces correctly in chess, then it's like, if somebody can have a strategy that can literally box certain pieces in that make them useless, because you wasn't using this. Now, you didn't probably box the piece in. Now it's kind of like useless, basically, because it can't really move, can't really operate, because it's waiting on you to move some other pieces out the way. So now it can, now it can kind of flow on the board a little differently. Just thinking chess wise, versus if you was looking at those pieces, be like, damn, in order for this piece to even have value, you have to have certain clear lanes where it can move and operate. You feel me? And then if this piece is set up in a certain position, it can help defend other different aspects of what we got going on. You feel me? So that's why it's like also, establishing the merchandise brand as a whole, as a company as a whole too, because it can really help push what we have going on, because that's what we say, we are the voice of the culture, right? So fashion is a whole nother canvas of how people express themselves and things of that nature. Shout out to my brother. He got a his brand is called Esteem, because he understands, you feel me, like the value that it has on us personally. You feel me? On us personally. You feel me? And that's why I respect his brand. But that's also what had me thinking like about like us. Like, we always talk about we the voice of the culture, and it was like that's another way that people, be a voice is with what they say. You got everybody right now talking about about the I Can't Breathe movement, the whole I Can't Breathe movement. You feel me? That's how people are using the fashion, to talk for them. You feel me? To represent the culture, because that is something that's going on heavy in the black community. You seeing black brothers, you feel me? Rest in peace, George Floyd being used as a doormat when they try to put their knee in our neck. You feel me? And they were expressing that like, man, you hear these men shouting out on these videos, I can't breathe. They letting you know I can't breathe. What more do you need? You feel me? So if you don't understand the words, maybe you might understand it when you read it on my shirt. That, hey, when the next time you hear men shouting, I can't breathe, realize that man cannot breathe. You feel me? And if you really, humanitarian, a lot of people are religious and stuff like that. You feel me? Stand on what you stand on, man. That's inhumane, man. A man's, you hear another man screaming for their life, I can't breathe, and you still in pursuit of whatever agenda that you may have against them. Come on, man. So I like those different things when it come down to fashion. Fashion is another way for you to relay that message. And like I said, being the voice of the culture, we all about communication, about communicating, and it's a whole nother platform. And by creating its own separate entity, it gives it its own life force to be able to operate and stand as its own person too, as well, which is good. So if it thrives and whoever's that leadership leads the right way and all that type of stuff, and it thrives, man, it can build up into its own person, which can benefit, which basically, benefits the family as a whole. Long story short, it benefits the family as a whole, because say like, you feel me, N's Family Products can hire, N's Media to do his marketing and his media production, and as long as that ends the family products is in position, to hire instead of, having to do everything in house, then hey. But then when they operate as own entity, they can look at things like that. You feel me? And because of the nature of the relationship, like, let's be real, because of the nature of the relationship, you feel me? It's gonna always be a helping hand. But just thinking in the business mind, like just really just thinking in business mind and taking things like that into consideration. Like, you gotta think about things like that. That's how a lot of companies is operating. It was funny. I was at Medtronic, you feel me? I never getting fired from there, but still, shout out to y'all. Y'all really try to help put me on. Y'all gave me an opportunity, gave me a job and things like that to help feed. It really helped. I just took that them few checks and put that in, reinvested that into myself. We here today, so I appreciate y'all. But long story short, when I was there, I seen they model, and I was like, hold on. They got a cafeteria in pretty much all their buildings, right? And it's a company that comes and cater to that cafeteria. But it's the company, though. Come to find out, they own the company that comes and cater to all these different locations that they have. They the one that own the company. So they're kind of in the food industry, but they're not on a major scale because the company only service their locations. Which is, I was thinking like, damn, that's actually pretty dope. But it operate on its own. So it managed and has its own structure. Only thing they doing is really just overseeing and making money off the dividends. Or just having just equity and things of that nature. But there's somebody else leading that ship. And it's running on its own. Which is pretty dope. So if it gets to a certain point, it can branch off and really grow and do its own thing. But then they can perfect the business model in house, because if they can serve a whole like manufacturing company, like a health, like, you feel me, that they got thousands of employees. If you could serve thousands of employees, I mean, just serve thousands of people, you feel me, at an efficient rate, then you can start thinking about expanding into like, malls, mini malls, and, basically just opening up in different places where they have that same atmosphere, that open shop. I mean, not open shop, but, they just basically got that same type of structure where, like, as flow as traffic and as far as building structure, where it complements your business model, where like, hey, if I was to put this in like a mini mall or something like that, I mean, not a mini mall, but if I was to put this in a mall or something like that, where they have cafeterias and like cafeteria areas, then You feel me? Make a little bit more money, but then you feel me? It's its own entity, so then it can operate and think like that. You feel me? As an entity. And you can go back to focusing. If you're a CEO or co-founder, whatever, you focus on what the hell you need to focus on, because that whole entity has somebody that's driving, has a CEO that's driving it. You feel me? That's going to try to make sure whatever the agenda is get done, which is mean that bottom line, making that dollar, making that money, and growing the legacy that you're trying to build. But like I said, I ain't gonna talk your ear off his badge. The whole long story that we basically was talking about was once you start to grow your company, your brand, just starting out, just really taking in note and really understanding the perks of separating those as two separate entities, the liabilities. So let's go back into it. Hold on, recap real fast. One of the main things that we was talking about. We started out talking about how N's merchandise was attached also to N's media, but for liability reasons, we branched those off to also operate as its own entity. In doing that, it also creates a path for it to create its own identity as being its own entity, and then you're able to put other someone else in position, other leaders that can focus in that specific area that can grow that entity. You feel me? But also for liability reasons too, on the financial, but also on the legal side. If you get sued or go through any financial things like, any legal things like that, that company, because it's his own company, operates his own company, is going to take that hit. But also, when you start to think on the financial side, it can start to build its own financial credit history. Like own credit, it can start to build its own capital and things of that nature. So where it can become self-efficient, and if you're starting out small, you don't always have to rely on, oh man, I'm using this company to pay for this company expense. Basically, long story short, because then that's what it really kind of comes down to. Like, oh yeah, I'm using money from my media company to pay for my clothing line and all that type of stuff like that, when the clothing business can operate as its own business, and things of that nature too. And then you can put somebody in a position that can have that mindset, that path, and also that knowledge, where they can just take that entity and grow it into, like, Fortune 500 company, probably, who knows? But things of that nature, they could just grow that entity as its own separate entity, and it doesn't have to take and it isn't basically impacted or influenced by, say, like, if it was still part of N's media. You feel me? Like, we was also saying that in conversation. So say if I was saying like, oh man, we spending too much money on merchandise, we got to cut back on that, because it operates as its own entity. It wouldn't have to. It just be referring back to what do they have in their own bank account. You feel me? Making the most out of their own circumstance versus having to come to N's media like, hey, can we get approved for this? Woo, woo. No, you're your own entity. You have your own money. You have your own bank account. You feel me? Hey, run with it. Run with it. But just thinking like that, and by any means, the team family isn't that big, but so we could be talking about one person, low key, we could be talking about one person, but it's just you're your own entity. You feel me? Go up, you're able to open up a business bank account. You can establish its own business credit, but it's also, you are liable for yourself too. So if you out here, you feel me? Like, we gotta make sure, hey, whoever's leading the ship, make sure that them products is on point and things of that nature, because we don't want to get sued as a whole, everybody. We don't want to see, oh man, N's merchandise getting sued, N's the family products is being sued and something like that. But if that was the case to happen, you are liable for that now. You feel me? You don't have, like, N's media ain't gonna take a hit. N's podcast, ain't gonna take a hit. N's music ain't gonna take a hit, because those are underneath N's media. But N's merchandise is his own LLC, can take that on hit by itself. Long story short, we ain't gonna talk out of death. We would love to hear from somebody else that's going through the same similar process, that have done something similar or the same, where you separated your entities, so then that, for liability purposes, but also to treat them as individual entities. I'd love to hear from you. This is another step being an entrepreneur and being on that entrepreneur grind. And if you like what we're talking about, you can go ahead and like, share, subscribe. or you can go ahead, hey, help support the small business. You feel me? Minority owned business to be exact too. And go cop some ends merchandise, man. Like I said, man, we are the voice of the culture. Each one teach one, man. You can help explain our story and what we stand for. Ends, which mean making the most out of your current circumstance. Ends the family. We are the voice of the culture. You know, it's your boy Baz. I'm tuning out. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.